Merhaba hocam, hoş geldiniz. Efendim merhaba, hoş geldiniz. Hoş geldiniz, safa geldiniz.
Greetings, welcome. You've brought us great pleasure by being here. It's great to be here with you today once more at this event organized by the University of Üsküdar. Today we will have Professor Dr. Omid Safi's presentation, Zati Mevlana's, the ancestors of Harakani, Ebul Hasan Harakani and Ahmad Ghazali. Before we start his presentation, his conference though, I would personally like to give a brief bit of information about him, and afterwards, hopefully, inshallah, God willing, Cemal Nur Sargıt will be invited to the stand, and then they will be followed by Omid. After we've listened to Omid, we will have a little ceremony for him, a certificate given to him by the University of Üsküdar. Üsküdar University has also started to plant trees for their guests in an effort to increase awareness. Following that, we will invite all the institute lecturers to the stage and we will take a group photo, and that's how we will conclude today's program. Now, why am I introducing Omid Safi to you? Because at Chapman Hill, University of North Carolina, they had the opportunity to work for 12 years, and 17 years ago, I believe, it was 2002, on the 30th of September, Excellency Mevlana's birthday, Omid arrived there too. Back then he was a lecturer at Congred University, and when Omid showed up, I saw this. I saw that we were acquainted from the beginning of time, really. It felt like that, so it never really felt like a new introduction. It felt like I always knew him. Professor Dr. Omid Safi is a very valuable friend, a very decent person, and an extremely valuable lecturer. Obviously, it's not up to me to evaluate how good of a person he is, but going over my experience with him for 17 years, there are a few things that I just like to say from the bottom of my heart. And I wanted to just write that down. I wrote a bit of things to say about him, but I'm not going to read everything to you. Omid Safi's father, Ali Safi, is a practitioner of medicine. Ali Safi and Quran Saki's child, Omid Safi. At Florida Jacksonville, he was born there. After his father's academic studies were conducted, they went back to Iran from America. And while he was on duty in Iran, the conflict between Iraq and Iran happened. And the family that has 3 sons and a daughter just couldn't afford to lose their sons to the war, so they go back to America. Obviously, these types of conflicts lead to substantial changes in a person's life, and you can see this from Omid's own life story too. Omid Safi becomes a student at Duke University. But before I move on, I want to say this. His father and mother has raised them with complete Muslim moral codes. They are beautiful people, all 4 siblings really. And in order for them to speak properly as well, speak beautifully as well, they used to watch news reporters in the US. So they were really well educated when it comes to linguistics as well, phonetics as well. Following his father's steps at Duke University, Omid met Professor Bruce Lawrence, and he tempts him. He says, I'm going to be a doctor, I have this much experience with my family, ayatollahs, we have a lot of lectures and hojas. He basically gets in contact with them, and Omid Safi eventually whilst studying biology and chemistry and go into medicine, he completely switches his direction and goes towards Islamic study, and that is great. Thank God for Bruce Lawrence for directing him in this way. In fact, Lawrence said that I believe Omid's mother is still upset with me because I prevented him from becoming a doctor. It's a funny joke that they have in between them. Now, people like to mention their friends as, oh, they're great, they're beautiful, they're great people, obviously, and I'm going to be mentioning Omid as well. He's a great person, he's a great friend, he's very sacrificing, and in order to overcome certain challenges, he will be with you hand in hand and he will suffer with you. He's a great father. He's very attentive to his children. We met years ago, and he went to Congrate again, and we always kept in touch. But Omid's had a position opening at UNC, and there was a talk about him coming back from Colgate to give the conference, and there was this stand just like this one. And he placed the pictures of his children, kissing them and putting them on the pedestal here, and they said, here they are supporting me, calming me down. So he's really a father who's also a friend to his children. He's a great husband as well. He's in love with Istanbul, and he really admires Turkey and its culture, and he loves the culture really. Whether it be the culture, the art, the cuisine, the literature, he knows everything about it really. In fact, he has this perspective, at least I like to think that he has that. Emin Hoca, please forgive me, I think it was Taşlıcalı Yahya's word that I just mentioned right now. Omid also believes in his philosophies and teachings. Obviously, I don't know as Farsi as much as Omid, but when he speaks it, I listen to it as if it's a poem, as if it's a song. And again, his English is really good. He really has a way of communicating with people's hearts. At one of his lectures, he was talking about his visit to Taj Mahal. And the valuable stones at Taj Mahal and God's grace combined gives such a colorful experience. It felt like the reflection of God amongst land, and it was just a really beautiful way of putting it, really. Omid, why is it so nice? Is he so beautiful? It's just not enough to call him these. He works for every Muslim's every breath. He knows his responsibilities to the fullest as an individual, and his research and the students that he raises seals what he has done so far. Obviously, we know very horrible things. 9/11 happened, and afterwards I brought this book specifically. He has a lot of books, but he published this book, Progressives Muslims. And here, in this book, he talks about modern-day Muslim problems, what the academy says, how they approach to the problems that we are facing. Evaluation of different perspectives are all written down. Without backing down from responsibility, he writes down these articles and really highlights the current issues. And I believe that this book itself is a very important milestone when it comes to progressive Muslims. Muslims are living in America. This really, brings you a voice. Excellency Harakani has a saying when he says, if my brother hurts, I hurt. And Omid also wants to find a cure for all the suffering for the world. The Excellency Prophet's works are also something that can be looked upon when you want to take an example on this. To stop tyranny, to make sure justice, righteousness can be implemented into the world is the ultimate objective, no matter who, man or woman, rich or poor, from here or from there. No discrimination based on race, religion, color, language. No, every individual is valuable. That's what he says. And maybe this could be a radical idea, but all Muslims, I believe, have this value stored deep in their hearts. Our Prophet says, when he who lays with a full belly when his neighbor is hungry is not one of us. Omid Safi also supports this thought as well. Social justice, gender equality, this progressive Muslim approach is something that we should pay attention to, which is exactly what Omid says. According to him, this approach is not simply theoretical or practical, it's a combination. As we see in the Sufis, and we should really disperse and increase this type of point of view amongst the common people as well. And they also talk amongst, in front of Bayezid Beysadi, this Muslim person says, why do you love Bayezid so much? Or why are you not being a Muslim if you love Bayezid so much? And Zardusht says, if you mean Bayezid's Muslim, Bayezid being a Muslim, if you consider that being a Muslim, I can't tolerate that. And if you think that I should be a Muslim just like you, then I just don't want to do that. After the events of 9/11, a lot of other horrifying events happened, just like the domino effect, and it still affects our region up to this day. Unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, in 2017, September, the Minister of Education at the consortium formed by Duke University and Chapel they implemented an audit, and they wanted to re-evaluate the curricula due to the Islamic events that have increased. And also they mentioned that they are going to cut down funding on these types of lectures. And unfortunately, these types of sciences are the target whenever these types of events happen. And these types of fundings are constantly getting cut down in the US. Looking at the University of North Carolina, on March 22-24, there was a program about Gaza. There were a lot of conflicting opinions there, and they were both represented. But when things come to the US government's initiative, sometimes things don't work out like that. Even though both parties were adequately represented, this final scenario that we're looking at right now is just a showcase of how non-tolerant they are towards criticism. To the point where this approach can be considered an insult. One of the statements there was that anything that would increase the United States security and economy should be highlighted over cultural studies, and this was perceived as a threat there. Especially the US's involvement in the Middle East and how to, instead of teaching children how to dominate that, they teach Middle Eastern cultures and different cultures and from countries, which is a negative outcome for us. Looking at their historical vision, there's a lot of racism and segregation there. So this mentality that still holds this Islamophobic perspective unfortunately threatened the consortium. So that's why Omid Safi being here today, getting out of that crossfire and being present here today is extremely valuable. We fully support Omid Safi for everything that he has done and everything that we hope that he will keep doing. Thank God you are here with us. Omid's one of Omid's previous students, someone who's at Syracuse University right now, a friend of mine, which I'm not going to declare the name of, learned that Omid was going to speak here, and I said that I was going to introduce Omid, and the person wanted me to say these things too. And this is a student of Omid. Professor Safi generally in areas where the Muslim literature and works are being forgotten, in regions like that, he teaches this once more and he remembers people. Unfortunately, conflicting sides are only moving each other to kill each other. There's no remnants of mercy or understanding or compassion left. Professor Omid accepts that we are our own opinions, and he also believes that there's a reasonable and peaceful common ground without intolerance, without hate, without arrogance, and he believes that these types of bad traits will only make us unjust. These types of traits also take us away from our own self, and eventually we get lost. All these bad traits should be kept in check, and we should be able to control ourselves to remove the curtains in front of our eyes and see the facts. Sufis that have been able to control their traits like this are usually rather considered non-academic. However, they also have an objective standpoint. With the fire of my youth as a second-generation Muslim in the US, I always objected to him, and he always listened to me with great compassion. In his book, Knowing the Prophet, he mentions his Jamal al-Sargat. He mentions the first experience he had with Jamal al-Sargat and says, look, Jamal is the person that we write about and read about in the books all these years. And Omid in this book says once more, thank you, by the way, this was a Nefes Yayınevi publishing book. Even if I'm not a rose, let me at least carry the scent of it. In order to know His Excellency the Prophet, we need to be able to understand him. In order for a rose smell to exist, a rose needs to exist as well. Hopefully now we'll get the chance to get the rose scent from the rose himself. Please, Mr. Omid, I invite you to the stage. I want to say millions of things about my dear son, but he was so well explained. Thank you. Thank God for you. Omid is my own son. Ever since he met with Kenan Fayaz, he has been the most precious being for me on the world. We always know to pay gratitude to the one that serves other people. He's one of those who serves people. I was invited to India about a program about Gandhi, and there we listened something from Emin Işık, and there we found out that Gandhi prays twice a day, namaz, and he uses the Elham writing of Quran, and he uses a proverb from the Bible on the second rakat. So while they were talking about it, I assumed that he has a Haji cloth, and the place that he visits is a location where all humanity gets together. And I know that he is actually Hindu. And when a Hindu kills a Muslim, he adopts the child of the person that was dead. And he said to the Hindu that killed the Muslim, he said, the only way you would be ever forgiven by God is if you raise this child with the Quran. And with this perspective, I made a speech. There were a lot of writers regarding to the Pakistani government, and there were a lot of government authorities that deemed me a non-believer because apparently I made the resemblance of Gandhi being a Muslim. And I told Omid, and Omid said, hey, welcome aboard. So I understood that unless you're deemed a non-believer, you're not really considered to be, radical. So thankfully we have these types of non-believers around us. If there wasn't the Pharaoh, if there wasn't His Excellency's Moses, how could we understand them? How could we understand these types of people without Trump? So that we see beautiful people like Omid's value more. I can't really say anything else about my boy. It is impossible for me to exactly portray how much I value him. He does amazing services. Like I said, like great sultans and everyone that serves the path to righteousness, I act as the soil for them. I am like the ground, the dirt for them to step on. I hope that he always serves, and I hope we are able to help them so that they may step on us. I am so happy for Omid and his newfound joy. I saw that Omid is very healthy, and I believe we owe that to his wife. Thank God for you, thank God for your wife, thank God for the fact that you found the one that you love. You love your wife, your wife loves you, and we love you all. Omid, I wish you a lifetime of happiness.
You know, one of my wonderful teachers in this world says that we all come into this world naked in the arms of our mother, and that when we leave, they wrap us in a sheet and they trust us to the arm of that mother, the Earth Mother. So why all the fuss about everything in the middle? So when I hear all these wonderful and kind and beautiful things that my friends say, I think all that I can never say is that since they are the arkadaş, the kardeşler, the dostlar, azizler, canlar, aşıklar, these are the mirrors, and what they're describing is just their own goodness and their own beauty and their own love. And how lovely that they might see it reflected. Before we begin by talking about these extraordinary giants who stand behind Maulana Rumi, propping him up, I want to just take a quick minute and share with you how blessed you are to be here. How blessed you are to be in an institute studying under the vision of Jamal Nur Hoja. There are other places in the world where you could go and you could hear the names of wonderful sages, great mystics, wonderful thinkers. You might even get to hear about their teachings. But there's a difference between someone telling you about honey and someone bringing honey in front of you and someone putting their finger in it and putting it right in your mouth. And when you are studying with Jamal Nur Hoja and with all the beautiful teachers that she has assembled, that's what you are doing. You're not just studying about a tradition, you are soaring with this beautiful tradition. So we are grateful and thankful for the people who are keeping this river flowing and uniting souls with God as they have been since before there was a time. Now, all of us, inshallah, in this room love great sages, really the pinnacles of Islamic spirituality, like Hazrat Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi. And an analogy that I sometimes like to use is to think of these giants as being like an extraordinary mountain range. So if you ask someone, what is the tallest mountain in the world, they would surely tell you Mount Everest. And every year there are many people who want to climb to Mount Everest to see what is the tallest mountain in the world. But you don't get Everest by itself. You only get that tall mountain when there's a whole mountain range behind it, the Himalayas, that supports it, that props it up, and pushes it towards ever higher heights. And it is the same way with Hazrat Mevlana. You don't just get a Hazrat Mevlana or a Sheikh al-Akbar Ibn al-Arabi. There are always these giants that have come before them, who are supporting them, propping them up, and pushing them towards higher and higher spiritual heights. Some of these giants may not be as well known as Hazrat Mevlana and Ibn Arabi. Or if we know them, we know something about them, but not so much about their actual teaching. So what I would love to do in the time that we have here together, inshallah, is to take our time and to go through the teachings of two of these spiritual ancestors of Hazrat Mevlana, Abul Hasan Harakani and Ahmad Ghazali, the younger brother of the much more famous Imam Al-Ghazali. I'll start by showing you a few pictures. So, Abul Hasan Harakani, who today is not so well known, has two shrines to honor him, one in Iran and one here in our beloved Turkey. This is the shrine in Iran that is commemorated for him, very close to the village of Harakani. And if you were to go inside, you would see a somewhat humble little room with a dome that has been added somewhere more recently. We know that Harakani was a very humble person. He was a shepherd. He never went to a university. He never went to a maktab. He never went to a madrasa. He just poured out his heart to Allah. And the way that he made his living was by actually watching other people's donkeys. He was the lord of donkeys. And he went into the desert and he collected pieces of wood that people could burn in the heart of their home to keep themselves warm. Very simple, very humble person. According to most biographies, he only left this village one time, and that was to go meet another Sufi master. He never went to Hajj, never went to Baghdad, never went to the great cosmopolitan capitals of the empire. It is here in Turkey that so much of the legacy of Harakani, and here I'll use the Turkish pronunciation, Harakani, is honored. So how beautiful that Jamal Nur Hoja and friends have also held symposiums to honor Harakani in these beautiful towns. And as you enter, you have the reminder of Adab Yahu, to maintain one's spiritual beauty and excellence, and the shrine of Harakani on the inside as well. There's a wonderful saying that is inscribed inside the Iranian Khanaqah of Harakani, which says, and you will see it here, Har ke dar in saray darayad nanash dahid و از ایمانش مپرسید چه آن کس که به درگاه باری تعالی به جان ارزد البته بر خوان بوالحسن به نان ارزد. Whoever comes into this abode, into this place, give them their daily bread. don't ask them about their faith. Don't ask them which religion they follow. Whoever was worthy of being granted a soul, a John, in the divine realm, surely deserves to be given bread in this realm. Right? That gives you something of the sense of humility that Abul Hasan Harakani embodies. What I have done in this talk is I've gone through some of the available Sufi texts, and I've translated for you, many of them for the first time into English, a lot of the short sayings of Harakani. Interestingly enough, even when the great European scholars like A.J. Arbery came to translate Attar's Tazkiratul Awliya, right, the memoirs of the saints, they left out the chapter on Harakani. So many of these sayings have not really been known in the scholarship on Sufism. So I thought, what better way to spend our hour together than to go through about 15 or so of these sayings. A couple of these I have put in the book of mine, Radical Love, that I wrote before. And I'll start with that one since we're here in the honor of our mother. And Harakani also talks about the importance of honoring your mother. He tells the story of these two brothers who had an elderly mother. But the two brothers had a very different temperament, a very different form of piety. One brother spent every day and every night in namaz, in prayer, and in dua, in supplication to God. He was scrupulous about maintaining every detail of religious law. The other brother stood vigil by their elderly mother. Anne, do you need water? Anne, do you need some food? Mom, can I help you get to the other side of the room? Morning and night, he was there to serve her. So one night, Harakani says, the brother who spent all day in prayer has a vision and he hears the voice of Allah. This is what every Sufi dreams of. And in his vision, the voice of God says to him, congratulations. For the sake of your brother, I have chosen to forgive all of your sins. And this brother says, oh, Ya Allah, I've been dreaming of this my whole life. I've been wanting to hear your voice, but I think you made a mistake. You see, I'm the praying brother. I am the brother who does the namaz all the time. My brother is the one that I never see him do his namaz. He's just the one who takes care of our mom. Surely, Ya Allah, you meant to say that for my sake, for the sake of my prayers and my namaz, you are forgiving his sins. And this is the response that Harakani gives to him in the voice of Allah. Anche tu mikoni, ما از آن بی‌نیازیم ولیکن مادرت از آن بی‌نیاز نیست. That which you do, we, God, have no need of, but your mother needs you. But your mother needs you. Now, Harakani himself, of course, spends his whole life in prayer. But he tells you these stories to remember that prayer cannot be separated from service, from kindness, from compassion. And story after story talks about this method of being close to God, close to the Prophet, and close to humanity. We will start by telling you a couple of the stories about his closeness to God. He speaks to God the way that one would speak with a friend. In fact, the foremost quality that he uses to talk about God is dosti, dost, friendship, friendship. He says, "One night I saw God Almighty in a dream. I said to God, 'For 60 years I have worked in the hope of your friendship, the Omid Dosti. For 60 years I've waited for the hope of your friendship, and I've desired to see you.' And God Almighty says to him, 'It's true, you've been wanting to see me for 60 years, but I'm here to tell you that since before there was an eternity, and until after there will be an eternity, I've been longing for your friendship. ما در ازل الازل در قدم دوستی تو کرده ایم.'" The way that Harakani speaks with God is this informal, friendly way. This is, imagine him in the desert tending to his donkeys and pouring out his heart to God. And in this affectionate relationship, there's humor, there's tenderness, and there's kindness. So one day, he says that he hears the voice of God. Apparently, he hears the voice of God all the time. God doesn't even call him Harakani. He calls him Bul Hasana, Hassan's daddy. Bul Hasana. "Do you want me to tell people everything that I know about you? Every little dirty secret about you? All of your shortcomings? And if I do, they will stone you." And Harakani is talking to his friend, so he doesn't miss a beat. He says, "Ey bar Khudaya, خواهی که تا آنچه از رحمت تو میدانم و از کرم تو میبینم با خلق بگویم." "My loving Lord, do you want me to tell people everything that I know about your rahmat, everything that I know about your mercy, everything that I've seen about your generosity? And if I do, no one is going to fear you anymore. No one is going to bow down in sajda anymore." And there's a silence, and he says, "I heard the voice of God come and say, 'Naz to, naz man.' How about you say nothing, I say nothing?" Right? This is this tender, friendly way that Harakani has. And it extends even to his death. He says, "My Lord, when my time comes to leave this world, don't send Azrael. Don't send the angel of death. You gave me your soul. If you want me, you have to come and take it. Don't send a messenger. I will not surrender my soul to a messenger. I want to see you yet again." The few times in life that he seems to have walked by a very serious scholar, the scholar kept saying things like, "This is the dunya, this is the lower realm, and that is the heavenly realm." And Harakani says, "I don't know what this arsh is, this throne is that you speak of. Arsh injast. God's throne is here. My God is right here, and right here and now, this is his throne." Right? There is no waiting for an afterlife to be with the beloved for Harakani. This tenderness with God also extends to his relationship with Hazrat Peygambar. This is one of my favorite stories that inshallah will go in the next collection. My beautiful wife Karina is responsible for the Radical Love book. Those are all the poems and stories that she had asked for. And now she's asking for stories like this one. So this will, inshallah, go into the next one. So you can thank her for that. There is the famous Imam who wanted to travel all over the Muslim majority world to listen hadith narrations, right? This was a very honored form of scholarship in Islamic civilization. You wanted to travel so that you could trace back hadith transmission with as reliable and as few chains of transmission all the way back to Hazrat Paygambar. So this Imam wanted to go to Iraq. And the Sheikh Harakani says to him, isn't there anybody here who knows the Prophet better than the ones in Iraq? And this Imam says, not like they know in Iraq. Who have you heard your hadiths from? And Harakani says, I heard them from the Prophet. And the Imam says, give me a break. I'm a serious scholar. I need to go study with serious scholars who can give me the chain of transmission that goes all the way back to Hazrat Paygambar. Harakani says, do as you like. That night, the Imam has a dream of the Prophet. Right? Another one of the things that we all yearn for. And the Prophet looks at him and says one sentence. He says, that chivalrous soul, Harakani, was telling you the truth. Jawan Mardan rast guyand. So the Imam comes back very apologetically the next day and says, I saw the Prophet in a dream, and he told me to come and sit at your feet. So he brings his hadith books, and he starts reciting the hadith books. Is this one authentic? Is this one false? He reads the first one, and Harakani nods. Yes, this is good. He reads another one, and Harakani shakes his head. And the Imam looks at his book, and he says, but this one is listed as an authentic hadith. And Harakani says, when you were looking down on the pages of your hadith book, I kept my eyes fixated on the eyes of Hazrat Paygambar. When you read that hadith, I saw the Prophet raise one eyebrow in disapproval, saying, I never said that. You read from the book. I read from the face of Hazrat Paygambar. Harakani takes this closeness to God, this closeness to the Prophet, and for him, it always translates to compassion, to kindness, to tenderness. He says, try to hang on to 4 things in life. Avoid excess. Try to pray with people. Show compassion to God's creation. And whatever you have, be generous in sharing it. And he even extends this generosity to the hereafter. Whenever he hears talk of hellfire and punishment, this really injures his tender heart. And so he goes and he speaks to his dost, to his God, to his friend. And he says, کاشکی بدل همه خلق من بمردمی تا خلق را مرگ نبایستی دید. I wish I could die in place of all these people, because I hate the thought of them suffering in death. They keep talking about how everyone has to answer to a reckoning, to a hisab in the day of judgment. Can you do that with me instead of all these people? And And if anyone is short on their hisab, and if they have to be sent to Jahannam, send me. Like, spare them. I like these people. I have compassion for these people. He also comes to this notion of whenever he hears people talk about heaven and hell, he says, Elahi, che budi ke dozakh o behesht nabudi. My God, I wish that there could be nothing like heaven and hell, so that we could find out who really worships you for your sake, not for the sake of some reward. When he describes his own understanding of this day of judgment, he sees all of this as being inside of him. So you have anybody who knows the Surah Al-Fatiha, you know that we pray, Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, oh God, guide us to and keep us on the straight path. And sometimes we're told that the Sirat is also the name of the bridge in the hereafter, perhaps a narrow bridge that we all have to walk over to get to the other side. Harakani understands this differently. He says, my lover, my friend, has given me a taste of serving him. Whatever I was given in the beginning will be given to me in the end. I came to see that the Sirat starts at the top of my hair and goes all the way down to the toenails of my feet. When we are told that you have to walk over the Sirat, he's telling you that you have to walk over your own ego. You have to get over yourself if you want to get to him. That's the Sirat. The Sirat is your ego. And he's also not quite so persuaded that there's one way to God. He says, I can't even count how many paths there are to Allah. There are as many paths to God as there are servants of God. Every path that I've sit on, I see it filled with people. He said, but I wanted to have some alone time with my God. So I asked him, is there a less crowded path? And God said, yes. And I said, which one is it? And God said, that's the path of suffering. And he said, I want that one. I'll choose that. I'll choose suffering if I can be alone. If nobody else wants it, I'll take that one, if I can just be alone with you. So for him, this journey to Allah is one that began before there was time, and it begins with his mother. He says, Dar rahem madar besukhtam. I was burning in love in my mother's womb. Before I was born, in my mother's womb, I was burning in love. When I came on this earth, I was burnt crisp. Sukhte. As I've reached the age of maturity, now I'm ready to meet again my friend. He says, I heard once people said that after Hazrat Mustafa, the beloved prophet, that Gabriel has never been sent to another person. He said, that's true. Gabriel hasn't come, but that intimate whisper of Allah, the wahy of Allah, has always been with me in my heart. My friend has never stopped talking with me. So he wants to know, how can he be with Allah? And so he says, I glanced at God's being, and God showed me my non-existence. I looked into my non-existence, and God showed me his being. When you reach this stage, then there's no reason to argue. There's no reason to fight. Even if that person happens to be Trump and is selling lots of very crazy ideas and crazy plans, they do their thing and we do our thing. And you have faith that goodness and beauty are from Allah and they last. And whatever is not good and is not beautiful, it will wash away. Right? He says, با خلق خدا صلح کردم که هرگز جنگ نکردم. I've made such a peace with God's creation that I never need to pick a fight with them. I have one fight, and that fight is with my own nafs, with my own ego, and I will never reach peace with that fight. Interestingly enough, he says, this struggling against our own ego is something that even the prophets had to do. Right? Even the prophets. One time he's walking in the desert and he sees a snake, and he sees that the snake has shed its old skin and it's moving beyond it. And he says, this is what I would love to do. I would love to shed my ego, my nafs behind, leaving it, so that I can just go to my Lord without that ego. And this idea of leaving the I, the me, the my, is what he is striving for. He says, Har ishq, ishq nabud. Not every love is a real love. I'm even ashamed to say to my God, Man to ra dost daram. I'm ashamed to say to God, I love you, because if I say to God, I love you, there's still that I in there. How can I just say, you are loved? That's what I'm trying to get to. You are loved. It's enough that you are. He says, even when I hear people around me say their prayers, everyone says, God and bread. God and give me. He says, and some people say, bread and God. Give me, give me, give me, and God. He says, I just want to get to the point of saying, God without bread, God without water, God without anything else. He says, even if, he says, even if you had never sent a messenger, even if there was no heaven, even if there was no hell, I would be exactly as I am, because I'm here for the sake of your friendship. If you've listened to the teachings of Jamal Nur Hoja, you know this beautiful commentary that she gives you on that wonderful verse of the Quran, Alastu birabbikum, am I not your Lord? Right? This is the primordial, eternal covenant that Allah has taken with every soul who has ever been, who is, and who will forever be. Harakani says, when God says, am I not your Rabb? Some people heard it as, am I not your Lord? Some people heard it as, am I not your friend? But a few people heard it as, am I not all there is? بعضی شنیدند, some heard it as, نه من خدام, am I not God? Some people heard it as, نه من دوست شمام, am I not your dost? But a few people heard it as, نه همه منم. Am I not all? Harakani hears a lot of people talk about zikr and a lot of these Sufi practices. He says, zikr is not that you sit in some corner and you just say, Allah, 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 Allah. He says, I wish you could know what it really is to remember the friend. And this is the description that he gives. He says, if there was one single person in the back corners of the earth who was remembering the friend as the friend deserves to be remembered, lions in the forest would urinate in awe. What is this? The fish would stop swimming in the ocean. Angels in heaven would collapse and fall down in sheer majesty of this one. The heavens and the earth would be filled with light. And the earth would become so ecstatically joyful that people would think there was an earthquake. So in Istanbul, we have a few earthquakes here. Every time that we have one of them, inshallah, no one is hurt. Just remember, maybe someone somewhere in a corner of Istanbul is really remembering Allah. And the light from this person shines forth until everyone and everything is covered. Right? It says that is the real zikr. People asked him, do you see God? He says, yeah. He says, where do you see God? He says, I see God everywhere, everywhere that my ego is not. پرسیدند که تو خدای را کجا دیدی؟ گفت آنجا که خویشتن ندیدم. Whenever I don't see myself, there I see God. And he says, I'm trying to become one of these friends that God fills their hearts with an abode of light. And on top of that, another abode of light, all the way above until all becomes God. So, some of these you have to hear with a little twinkle in his eye, with a little smile on his face. He is in Khorasan, in northeast Iran today, and he sees someone dressed up in a pilgrim's outfit, and he says, where are you going? He says, I'm going to Hijaz on Hajj. He says, what are you going to do there? He says, I seek God. And he goes, is something wrong with the God of Khorasan? Isn't God here also, as much as the God in Hijaz? And then Harakani says, remember, our beloved Hazrat Payghambar said, seek knowledge, even if it's to be found in China. He didn't say, seek God. God is right here. For knowledge, yes, travel to China. But don't think that for finding God, you have to go to China. God is also here, and there, and everywhere. Someone asked him, how can I be with Hazrat Payghambar? I want to live with him. I want to be with him. I want to experience him. This was his answer. He says, live for a single day from morning until nighttime and do not injure the heart of a single soul. If you do that, it is as if you have spent that entire day right next to the Prophet. So very close, very careful attention to one's own soul, to one's own being. And the result is this intimate, close friendship with Allah. Many of his prayers are so tender, so beautiful. This is one of my favorite ones. He says, God said to me, my devotee, my servant, my friend, چون به راهی روی راحت منم. When you set foot on a path, I am your path. When you enter a house, I am your guest. I am your host. When you speak, I hear your words. When you think, I am the knower of your thoughts. If you run to me, I am the one who grabs you by the hand and embraces you. If you flee away in fear, I'm the one who makes you feel safe. You have hope in me. I'm faithful. من با توام. تو نیز با من باش. I am with you. You also be with me. I am with you. You also be with me. که به آبادانی با توام. If everything is going well, I am with you. And if you are ruined, if you are in that qabth, in that dark night of the soul, I'm also with you. به ویرانی با توام. He says, if you can live like this, then every place is a masjid for you. Every day is a Jummah for you. And every place is like, every month is like the month of Ramadan. Yes. God brought you into this world pure. So don't go back to his presence filthy. Purify your heart. You came here pure, return to him also pure. In some of the statues that have been made for Harakani, he's shown as sitting next to these lions because he has tamed his own ego. Alhamdulillah, this one doesn't suit my life anymore because I have gone through a few hells in life and now I'm living in a heavenly state of joy. But if any of you have had a difficult marriage, Harakani had the most difficult of marriages. There's a story that Attar says, when we were coming up here, I saw a picture of the great philosopher Ibn Sina, Avicenna. Avicenna wanted to go see him, and he goes to him, and Harakani is not there, but his wife is there. And his wife hated him. And Ibn Sina says, I've come to see the great Sufi Harakani. And his wife is like, why do you want to see that liar and that heretic? And Avicenna is like, okay, well. So he goes into the desert, and there is Harakani picking up pieces of wood, and there's a lion walking next to him, carrying the pieces of wood for him. And Ibn Sina says, how did you get that lion to be so tame? And he says, well, I had to show a lot of patience to the dragon that you met. But the patience that I showed to that dragon now makes these wild lions be so tame next to me. Hazrat Maulana in the Masnavi retells this story. Surely many similar stories could also be told about husbands. We know. And he says, he goes on to describing the experience of Harakani and what he was like. And at the end of the whole story, when Maulana is trying to describe the spiritual state of Hazrat Harakani, he says, As hame oham tasvirat dur, he is beyond any description that I can give for him. Maulana almost never repeats a word too many times. He does here. The rhyme is dur, nur, 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 nur. Right? 6 times. Light upon light, upon light, upon light, upon light, upon light. So he chose the path of suffering, and that path of suffering was what brought him to the state of sanctification that he reaches. This is just one of the giants who stands behind Maulana. And how much more do we have to learn? Sadly, the book of the sayings of Harakani has never been translated to English. I've given you about 20 of his sayings. There's about 400 of them. Right? These are gems. These are jewels from our tradition. In the last 15 minutes, I want to just give you a taste of one other giant, and that's Ahmad Ghazali. Ahmad Ghazali. So as I mentioned, his older brother, Abu Hamid Muhammad Ghazali, is so well known, sometimes called the greatest Muslim scholar ever. But this younger brother, Ahmad, is not so well known. So here, he's shown sitting on the right-hand side, across from his murid, Al-Qazat Hamedani, wonderful great Sufi. I'm very fortunate that when I've come to the Suleymaniya, I've been able to find manuscripts of them that, alhamdulillah, I've been able to take back home. And maybe, inshallah, I'll be able to translate those if we're given life and breath also. This is what Hazrat Maulana says about Ahmad Ghazali. Right? He says, his brother, Imam Muhammad Ghazali, he raised the banner of knowledge in the whole world. He went into the ocean of knowledge and stirred it up. He's become a model for scholars all over the world, and he's the scholar for the whole world. Amma. However, if, like his younger brother Ahmad, he had been able to bring one zarre, one little iota of ishq, of ashq, into this world, it would have been better. Because then he would have made known the secret of qurbat Muhammadi, of Muhammad-like intimacy with God. Because in this whole world, there is no ustad, there is no master, there's no murshid, there's no guide, and there's no mosel. Nothing delivers you to union like ishq, like love. And then Maulana adds a line in honor of Ahmad Ghazali: choose love so that you become chosen. Choose love so that you become chosen. When I have gone to Konya and I've studied the manuscripts there, the writings of Ahmad Ghazali and Ain al-Qazat were studied by the students of Hazrat Mevlana and the early Mevlevis. This is the path of love that they studied. So, just in a few minutes, what do we get? Ahmad Ghazali's masterpiece is known as the Savaneh, which fortunately is translated into both English and I believe Turkish as well. Yeah. And if you like Plato, you will love Ahmad Ghazali. These are very mystical and philosophical and poetic kinds of discourses. Ahmad Ghazali's almost whole work is a meditation on this one ayah of the Quran, يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُ. God loves people and they love God. So here's one chapter of the Savaneh where he starts. He says, the root of ishq begins in pre-eternity. There is a nukta, there's a dot under the bed of yuhibbuhum, under the bed of God loves them. That nukta becomes a seed that you plant in the soil. In the garden of your heart, you plant the seed of God loving you. And then you get a new plant. And that new plant is, they love God. When this new tender flower of love comes out, the plant is of the same color, the same essence as the seed. So what is he saying? That our love for each other, our love for God, is of the same essence as God's love for us. Before the time of Ahmad Ghazali, most of the Sufis made a distinction between ashq hakiki and ashq majazi. Real love, which was the love for Allah, and majazi love, metaphorical love for other humans. Ahmad Ghazali changes this. He says there's one ashq, one love. So when he's writing the Savaneh, and this shows up in so many of the writings of Hazrat Mawlana, the hakiki and majazi never entirely goes away, but it's supplemented by this teaching of one love. His friend said to him, oh, we just want you to write something for us about love. Sometimes we don't feel it. We don't feel love. And he says, okay, I'll write you something on one condition. I'll write you a book on love as long as it doesn't belong to this perspective or that perspective. به شرط آنکه در او هیچ حواله نبود نه به خالق و نه به مخلوق. As long as you don't divide love into the love of the Khaliq, the creator, and the makhluk, the created. I'll write you a book of love if you always remember that there is one love. That if you want to learn to love Allah, you have to learn to love humanity. And that the love that we share with one another is none other than the love of Allah that is flowing. It's not your love. It is this cosmic river of ashq that is flowing through you, and it will carry you back to God. And I think this might be the last little teaching that we have from Ahmad Ghazali. So when he begins the book of Savaneh, you see that he starts it with the saying of the Quran, قال الله تعالى يحبهم ويحبونه. God Almighty has said, He loves them and they love Him. And then he gives a poem as an explanation of that verse of the Quran. And what does he say? با عشق روان شد از عدم مرکب ما. from non-existence, since before there was even the kun fayakun, since before there was being, before there was existence, our steed, our horse, meaning in this case our spirit, was joined together with love. Love exists before there is being, because love is Allah. Love is not created. And love comes riding even before there's being, before there's existence. روشن ز چراغ وصل دائم شب ما. In our home, the heart, our night is always lit up with the lamp of union. And then he's playing with wine metaphor here. From that wine which is unforbidden in our religion, from now till we go back to non-existence, our lips will never be dry. And that intoxication, of course, is the intoxication of love. So, these are some of the giants that have stood behind Hazrat Maulana. These are some of the mountains that have been propping him up. And I hope, inshallah, when we then come to Ya Hazrat Maulana, and you see at the bottom where it says things like Ka'batul Ushaq bashad in maqam, har ke naqis amad inja shod tamam. This place is the Kaaba for the lovers. That we remember that this lovers is not a generic word, that it's been shaped and loved and nurtured and fed by all this tradition, Ahmad Ghazali and Harakani and Hazrat Payghambar and all the sages that have come before. And there's hope, there's Omid, even for one like me, because we're reminded you come on the path of love because you are naqis. You come not because you're already perfect, not because you're already complete. You come precisely because you are broken and broken-hearted and incomplete. And there is a good news, that there is shafa and dava and salamat and afiyat, and all of that comes from ishq, inshallah. Thank you for the gift of your time. Hojam, thank you so much for allowing me to come back and be with you, alhamdulillah, and with your friends and with your students. Çok teşekkür ederim. Allah razı olsun.
Omidcan, many thanks. Şükran. Efendim şimdi soru cevap kısmı geçiyoruz.
Now we will move on to the questions and answers. For anyone that has a question, we will bring over a mic. And you can ask your questions. First and foremost, we would like to thank you very much to our lecturer Omid. I have just a tiny contribution regarding the statements of love. I would just like to say a very short thing. I saw the headline of the conference and the pre-giants of Mevlana, Ahmad Ghazali, Harakani, when it comes to divine love. When we look at it from a divine perspective, I always think about this one thing. According to the traditions that Mevlana was brought up with, he was brought up with very important very important traditions. He was growing up with those. Amongst Kudlevis, Mevlana really highlights the importance of love, and that's all we know about him. So when we say, where does this come from? We see this very important information. And Ahmed Aflaki says that Merak al-Ubladi, Mevlana's father, was bound to Kıbleviye cult, but also his origins derive from Ahmad Ghazali. And the followers of this tradition have this trait. When they raise a person, they like to convey their own spiritual traits, their own spiritual properties to the person that they are raising. So through this transition, through this transformation, a chain happens. It's like DNA, how DNA gets transferred from father to son, from generation to generation. This is very similar to that. And these traits and properties, based on the raising of the individual, can also be seen a few generations later as well. So Ghazali's importance on love has been transferred from Sheikh to Imami Ghazali even. And within Imami Ghazali, due to divine appreciation, Shamsi Taysi highlights this potential in him. And it inflames him, it burns him from the inside. I'm done, I'm well done, I'm cooked. And in fact, I'm burnt. Shamsi Tabrizi, Excellency, was the one that burnt him. So this divine love, I always anointed that to Ahmad Ghazali through this chain of transformation of traits and properties from one generation to another. And when we ask about how does this come to Ahmad Ghazali, our lecturer Omid explained this very well, because all the traits, all the good traits come from our Prophet directly, because they're all bound to the Prophet. Individuals from time to time sometimes highlight these traits and properties. So our lecturer Umid reminded us this. So this divine love, as the pioneers of Mevlana, Harakani, Ghazali, we were able to remember them thanks to you. And for your speech, for this event, I would just like to offer my thanks to you one more time.
Your speech was great. In Feridun Attar's Tezkiretül Evliya, at the end of the chapter Harakani, there is a sentence. It says, if you know Allah by aql, reason, you gain ilm, knowledge. If you know God, Allah, by faith, iman, you gain comfort. But if you know Allah by marife, gnosis, you face trouble. Dert bulursunuz. What does marife in this sentence? What does it mean? Does it mean love? I want to know, what do you think about it? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I think you are seated next to the very people that if you have questions about Ma'rifat, you can turn to them and ask them. I think they are so much more knowledgeable than anybody else is. I think just in the light of the tradition that we've been talking about here, this is that part in the Sufi tradition where they make a difference between ilm as the knowledge of something and ma'rifat as a tasted knowledge, experienced knowledge. Ma'rifat comes from arafa, which is that intimate knowledge. It's the knowledge in your bones. It's the knowledge of how you remember your mother's cooking and you will never forget about. The way that you remember the scent of a lover's embrace. It's not just a head knowledge. It is the knowledge that has become a part of you. One example, we talked about the honey metaphor earlier. I've always appreciated this explanation that you can bring, and I'm mindful that Hojam, among other talents, was a chemistry teacher. And so you can bring honey and you can write the chemical composition for bal, for asal, for honey on the board, and you wouldn't lick it. It's not very sweet, the chemical composition of it. Then the next level would be you could write HONEYBAL on the board, and okay, something, but you could then bring a bowl of honey and you can raise it up to people and they can say, oh, it's golden color, it's amber color. Most religious teachings for most people look like one person standing, and that one person is putting their finger in the honey and they put it in their mouth and they say, MashaAllah, how sweet this is. And we're asked to say, I have faith that that person standing up there has put the honey in his mouth and her mouth, and they say it's very sweet. Marifat would be that you put your own finger and you put it in your own mouth. And what the Sufis sometimes say is, when that honey is in your mouth, then you don't speak. Because when you're tasting, you don't speak. And the people that have tasted the most sometimes have the least to say about it. So one should be a little suspicious of people who stand on a stage and talk about Sufi teachings too much, because maybe it just means that they have more burning that they have to do.
Allah razı olsun. Çok güzel. Teşekkürler. Başka? Omniye Hoca. Evet.
Dr. Safi, thank you so much for coming over here. We're so pleased and honored to have you. Listening to your talk is like flying in the sky, and we got very spiritual. It's very motivating intellectually and very satisfying emotionally. And you're talking about love, and when it comes to Ahmad Al-Ghazali, he believes that love is God's essence. One of the very few Sufis who actually dare to say that. And I believe that too. But then I come to see the news about what's happening in the U.S., especially when it comes to Duke UNC Center of Middle Eastern Studies, and I find this horrible and appalling news. And I go like, where do you see yourself fit in all this? Where does love fit in all these atrocities that seems to be really increasing in recent days? How can you stay positive and lovely against all that? What's your stance on that, I wonder? Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I think you see your own heart's goodness in all of this, and may God increase all of our capacity, inshallah. Inshallah. I think, the first thing I would say is for us to be patient with ourselves. All of us are a mixture of nur and some darkness as well. And so if we have, and I certainly do, moments in which our response to something may not be so much filled with ashk, not so much filled with nur, to also say, okay, inshallah, we'll continue on this journey a little bit more than before. As far as, the other parts of it go, it helps to have teachers, it helps to have murshid, it helps to have love in one's own life. One should never look to the people who are attacking you not for anything that you've done, but simply for who you are, to give you your sense of self-worth. Right? It's much better to look into your mother's embrace, to a teacher, a guide, a wife, a husband, a child, a puppy. We have a beautiful puppy at home. That look to the ones who love you to be your mirrors, not to the ones who are attacking you and attacking your community. And as far as other than that goes, look, if you take that same bowl of honey and you put it outside, flies are going to come to it. Sometimes when we're attacked for what we do, I found it personally a little humorous that the Trump administration attacked us for actually having had a lecture on ashk. They said, oh, how can they have talk of love on the Islamic tradition when we just want you to talk about terrorism? I think it's actually a very good reminder for us to remember, as Harakani says, we walk on the path where whatever the beloved gives, we say, Eyvallah. Right? Whose footsteps are we walking in? Hazrat Peygamber's. Right? He had children being paid to throw stones at him. We walk on the footsteps of Imam Ali, who was killed. We walk in the footsteps of Imam Hussein and his family, who were killed. We walk in the footsteps of Hazrat Maulana and his family, who were forced to flee Balkh and to travel to a part of the world, alhamdulillah, which received them with open arms, but was not initially their homeland. Right? So and we're not any more beautiful than any of them. Hazrat Fatima cries when Hazrat Peygamber tells her that he will die soon, and then she smiles when he tells her that you will be the first one to join me. We're not any more filled with light than them, and they had to suffer. And they endured their suffering with dignity, with grace. So if we are sometimes attacked, may it be that we also respond in their way, right? When we say, what does it even mean to be a Muslim? And we are told, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةٌ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We are a people of mercy. We were not sent here to curse. So when we are attacked, we take a breath, we still respond in mercy. Maybe it will not change that person's heart, but maybe it will change others. Inshallah, may it change the lives of our children, our grandchildren, and the ones to come after us a little bit better. We look back on them as our ancestors, and we draw inspiration from them. They are the ones who are not yet born, who will someday look back on us, and they will want to draw inspiration from us. So we owe it not just to our ancestors, but to the ones for whom we are to be the ancestor, to stand up, to hold our head high, but also to speak with tenderness, with kindness, and with mercy. May that, inshallah, be a message.
Hocam peki.
Omid, ben Ahmad Ghazali ilk senden öğrenmiştim. Çok müteşekkirim bu konuda sana. Ben bir arkadaşımdan bahsetmek istiyorum. Aşık olmuştu.
My friend fell in love, and they came to the house one day and said that your house is on fire, and he said, I don't care, I'm in love. When one is in love, you really don't care if the entire world burns. Once you get the love of God inside a body, in that heart, just like my mom says, there's only peace and happiness, because this approach, this tradition, really just comes down to feeling happiness and tranquility and peace in heart, and only love can make this happen. Whoever treats us bad, who treats us bad? God. Who loves us? God. Is there anyone else? No. That's the end result. But today, once more, I look at you, and I see you as a grace of God. I hope you carry this love. It is so important, so crucial that you are in America. It is so valuable and such a great service that you are here on these stages, on these podiums. God protect you on your path, and hopefully God gives us the opportunity to become a martyr on this path to love, to God. Thank you, and thank God for you. Mr. Omid has had enough questions. The Institute of Divine Research, Reşat Öngören, will now take the stage to give Omid his certificates. Now we would like to take a group photo. I would like to invite all our lecturers, Jama, Corina, Elif, to the stage. Thank you so very much for attending this conference, and hope to see you on the next program.